Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am so excited to be on stage with these three incredible women. I am representing the Artemis Fund. We're a venture capital fund investing in female-founded companies, democratizing wealth via fintech, care technology, and commerce enablement. I'm joined by three of our portfolio founders. Is all good? Okay, cool. To chat a little bit more about the intersection of impact and growing, a high-performing, high outcomes-driven company. To give you some more context around Artemis, we have included impact as part of our thesis since the beginning of the fund, which launched in 2019. Impact to us, we find that impact-driven founders are laser-focused on solving a real painful problem for their customer in typically, large and misunderstood markets. Our portfolio spreads kind of a range of social impact from increasing health outcomes for the aging population to supporting small businesses and helping families make better investment decisions. As a fund, we hit pretty solidly on SDG 5, gender equality. Less than 2% of venture capital today goes to female founders, which is abysmal considering that female founders again and again and again show they outperform. They have higher returns on investment, they exit more quickly, and they hire more diverse teams. And so, we think it's only logical to write large checks for these female founders. So I am really, really excited to pass it on to you guys to talk more about the work that you're doing. I'll let you introduce yourself, your company, and your mission really briefly. Start with you.
Absolutely. I'm Sophie. I am the CEO of GoodFind. We are a vertical fintech for small businesses, really focused on the mobile segment. So any business without a permanent location, think food trucks like the yummy ones that'll be outside, we support them. Business in a box tool, so we do end-to-end payments, lead generation, operations, and are introducing banking as a service, where all of our small businesses can completely control their data and scale. So really excited to be here and looking forward to talking with Juliet.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia Modenova and I am a founder of DressX. DressX is your meta closet, your wardrobe of digital clothing, because nowadays we spend more and more time online. And for that, we don't have to use clothes that are produced in a physical format, which is way more sustainable. We have a research that proves that. We will talk about it in more details later. And right now, DressX has several interfaces. One of them is mobile app, available both on iOS and Android. We also partner with large companies like Snapchat, Meta, Google, Roblox. Just today we announced another partnership with Roblox and fashion collection that we launched there, because for us it's important to meet people and users where they are and let them dress them up where they already are. And also we distribute part of digital fashion outfits as NFTs on blockchain, but that's a niche market still. However, we embrace all the new technologies and build our fashion tech company with implementation of ML, AR, and blockchain as well.
Hi, I'm Abby Donnell, founder and CEO of Work and Mother. Work and Mother is a tech-enabled lactation suite amenity service for commercial buildings. So most employers have a legal obligation to provide a mother's room. Those standards are pretty bad, and it results in moms crouching in IT closets or bathrooms to try to pump breast milk during the workday. So we are taking moms out of the closet and putting them into real quality spaces in the workplace. We work directly with commercial landlords to provide the technology, the know-how, the equipment, and the virtual operations to offer these solutions for their entire building in a way that checks a legal box for every tenant in the building, but also provides a much better solution for working parents. So from a mission-driven standpoint, we obviously are big on the health and wellness, but also the gender equality and keeping women in the workforce and closing that motherhood gap. So really excited to be here today.
It's so interesting that each of you are building such impactful companies in really distinct spaces and impacting different communities, and so I'm excited to dig into that. But before we do, maybe starting with you, Abby, and we'll go down the row. Tell me a little bit more about, each of you are on the precipice of some really exciting growth. Tell me a little bit more about how you think about the synergies between impact and scale.
Sure. Well, so I think today, especially, we have more savvy consumers. We've got people that are making purchasing decisions that take into account impact and the actual repercussions of the services that they're deploying or the items they're purchasing. And so for us, for example, from the landlords, as I mentioned, we work directly with landlords, they're looking at ESG requirements within their portfolios. Many people are familiar with LEED certifications of buildings where it's measuring the sustainability of the building. Well, now there are requirements called Fit Well and Well, and they measure the health and well-being of the inhabitants of the buildings. So landlords are looking to bring in things that further that mission. And then tenants on the other side, especially in a post-pandemic landscape, are looking for things that actually move the needle with, keeping their workforce healthy, recruiting, retention, especially around women. And so for us, from a scale perspective, being able to check those boxes and do something that is not only feel good because we can see the health outcomes, we can see the outcomes from a recruiting and retention rate of women in the workforce, but it's improving the bottom line. And so it makes it very easy for them to make these decisions and deploy it across real estate portfolios because, there's a 3x ROI for an employer who offers breastfeeding support programs. And there's, companies that have more women or 30% management level positions filled by women have a 15% higher ROI. So I think the consumer, all the way down from the individual up to the landlord, is more savvy. And so we think about kind of aligning the impacts with the returns, and it's working very well.
How about you, Natalia?
Well, for us, from day one, it was obvious that scale is definitely tied to innovation and to impact because my background and my co-founder's background is in the traditional fashion industry, and we know very well how polluting it is. And we also observed that really implementation of tech really helps to run a business in a better way. At the same time, as you mentioned, the consumer becomes more savvy, and 77% of consumers would likely even pay more for sustainable fashion product rather than not. And from day one, we understood that clothing doesn't have to be produced in physical format every time. Because a lot of the times it can be worn just in digital because we meet in digital format more and more. And definitely it's way more scalable because absolutely, yes, you produce it once and you can wear it multiple times. Of course, there is exclusivity in digital world exists as well. However, anyways, it's way more scalable from day one. And also, we calculated the environmental impact of digital fashion item and physical. And of course, digital is 97% less polluting. So it produced 97% less of CO2 compared to the physical on average. And of course, it does not use any water in a production. So it gives a significant environmental impact, and that's exactly why we work closely with United Nations Environmental Program Office and their Fashion Impact Fund as well. And with 1% of displacement rate of physical wardrobes to digital, we will reach savings of 35 millions of tons of CO2, which is annual emission of a country the size of Denmark, and also 5 trillion liters of water, which is annual kind of consumption for agricultural industry. So the impact is huge here. Of course, it will take step by step. Sometimes people say, but it's like a future, what are you talking about, digital clothing? But then when I show up on a Zoom call wearing some digital accessories, sometimes people don't notice that it's not real, but what is real? It gives us a real emotion of like feeling good. It gives us real chemical reaction in our brain, but just it does not exist in physical format, but it's pretty real anyways. So yeah, definitely scale and impact go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with these two ladies. Like, consumers are changing, they're getting more savvy. But for me, you know, impact was never a choice. It's always been a purpose. I'm a first-generation American. So are both of my co-founders. And we knew that the wealth and opportunity gap for our families was clear. It's also well-researched. And so when we decided to, you know, build something ourselves, we knew that we wanted to be able to mix fintech with impact, because a lot of times when we saw companies fail, it was because they never owned their data, right? A lot of the incumbent tools were too overweight, too pricey, and businesses that, you know, should thrive weren't able to, because they weren't able to make, you know, the best business decisions. And so creating GoodFind was always about purpose, and working for, you know, people that look like my dad, who is Nigerian and still has an accent like he just, you know, came to America yesterday. So you never quite understand what he's saying, but it's personal. And so the added benefit, though, to that is, you know, these populations do fail less because they're super, super scrappy. And it's also because of the more remote work and things like that. When people are looking to come into business, they're not looking for a brick and mortar anymore, right? It's costing $500,000 to $1 million on average to have a brick and mortar. To start a mobile business, $50,000. When you're talking about populations that are underbanked and underserved, and actually 80% of our customers are either Black, brown, immigrant, or women, which we're really proud about, right? They're able to come into business because of these lower price points where they wouldn't have been able to before. And by leveraging a platform like GoodFind, they can eventually go into brick and mortar if that's something that they choose. But we're finding that instead of buying a brick and mortar, they're just getting another mobile vehicle, right? Because it's more cost effective, a quicker way to wealth, and we're you know, ensuring that they own their data and own their experience end to end. So it's been part customer, you know, push, and also just super personal for me to be able to build in this way.
Totally. And to your point about 80% of your customer base being diverse, like, tell me, I mean, no one talks about food truck tech or, you know, or mobile business tech like this, but it's huge. I mean, and, you know, this market is massive.
It is.
Tell me a little bit more about, you know, maybe why people aren't innovating here, and what drew you to this customer and this pain point, and like, how did you figure out it was a huge opportunity?
I mean, people aren't innovating here because when you think about a brick and mortar, you're like, oh my God, this person can make $5-10 million, right? And the money is always, like, tech is always built for revenue, and so it's simple to see why, you know, people will overlook the space. But what they're missing is that this space is becoming the new normal, right? So food trucks specifically is the most diverse but also fastest growing segment of the restaurant industry. They've outpaced brick and mortars 5x. Over the last 10 years. So it's been a trend, while brick and mortars are consistently dying, right? They've been stagnant for the same amount of time. And now you're seeing ghost kitchens and things like that spin up and do licensing with different restaurants because they need proximity, right? Even if you're leveraging like a DoorDash or Uber Eats, which is what restaurants have been doing to kind of thrive, it's because they need to extend their radius beyond that, stagnant location. Well, mobile businesses can be wherever the customers are. They can be at festivals, they could be at pop-ups, they could be right at your front door. And because of that, the industry is booming. And you see bigger bets happening in this space now because people are starting to get a little bit more hip to it. But in order to service the community really well, you had to build mobile first. You had to build with that movement in mind, which is something that we did. And so now we're like the world's only end-to-end solution for these businesses, which is really cool. But we saw the opportunity because we saw our parents and we saw our family members have mobile units, and we knew that we could do it better. So it was kind of always in the back of our mind that this is the industry that we need to be a part of, and now the data is supporting that. So.
Yeah, what I love about that is so much of your own experience feeds into like your understanding of what a solution could look like here, which is why it's important to fund diverse entrepreneurs, right?
So true.
And I mean, to that point, Abby, I would love to know a little bit more about your overlooked, community and customer. When you think about women who pump in an office space, like you might not think that a lot of women are doing it at any given time, right? But I think that's a misunderstanding. And so tell me a little bit more about the problem, why it's important to invest in these spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a very common misconception, in part because moms are used to having to be kind of scrappy and figure things out. And when they were trying to get back to work and there wasn't something for them, that's when they would go pump in the closet or go pump in the bathroom, or a lot of times in their car in the parking lot. We actually opened a facility in Houston recently where the facility is actually, it's kind of cool and hard to explain, but it's sort of between the building and the parking garage in a breezeway. It's super convenient to moms when they're coming in and out. Beautiful facility. Well, when we opened the doors on that facility that was serving 2.3 million square feet of real estate, we actually saw moms coming out of their car to come into the building. So I think for quite a while, it did feel like an invisible problem because women were so isolated as they struggled with it, which led to huge turnover rates. So even though over 75% of women plan to come back after childbirth, you see a 43% turnover rate during that first months back, and it's because you come back, there's literally no support. You're lugging your equipment. So if you're trying to pump, which by the way, the AAP has always said, they recommend breastfeeding exclusively for the first 6 months and supplementally up to 12 months. Well, last year, amidst a formula crisis, they came out and said, actually, we're going to bump that to 24 months. Good luck, And moms everywhere were just like, oh my gosh. And so you're seeing people, especially post-pandemic, antibodies trying to breastfeed longer, but there's just absolutely no resources, no spaces, no equipment in place. And so the success rate at 6 months for moms who work outside the home is 10%. Of moms who have had access to our suite, that number jumps to 90%. So it shows that if you give the proper spaces, equipment, and support resources, it makes a world of difference. And so when we've launched a few of these, and we're very thankful for the landlords who partnered with us early on to, in a leap of faith to test this concept out, we had that same thing. How many moms do you think it is? And we have to reframe it. First of all, it doesn't matter. You don't go to a building and not expect there to be a bathroom because, how many people might be in there and for how long? Like, the facilities are there, and legally, employers have to provide something. So you need that insurance policy, and you need to be inclusive. Over 83% of companies have DEI initiatives. Well, if the physical spaces they're trying to work in aren't inclusive, then those policies don't mean anything. And so some of our early landlords were kind of like, how big is this problem? And they took a leap of faith in us, and we launched these projects. And like this, we had 33% of the rent roll with moms in there pumping, and we had leasing tours coming and being like, yes, this is what we've been needing for our employees. And so it started moving the needle, and it started shining a light on the problem. I think legislation as well, just in December, the Pump Act passed, which furthers a lot of legislation in this direction and a lot of protections to working parents. And so all of that is helping shine the light on how big this opportunity is. And the fact that there's over 2.5 million births a year to moms in the workforce. So
That's great, thank you. Natalia, I'm really curious about, so like DressX, a digital fashion company, could be huge without any mention of impact, right? Like you don't need to talk about the displacement of physical goods, I think, for DressX to be a massive, scalable company. How has this like really careful, thoughtful impact tracking and the reports that you publish annually around your impact, how has that affected your storytelling and maybe your customer acquisition? Dig in there a little bit more.
Well, it was a pillar, founding pillar from the very beginning. For us, that's exactly why, because we understood a problem, and we think we know the solution, and we see the traction, and it's actually relevant. But there was no data on the subject. I remember it was the beginning of 2020. It was COVID lockdown were starting, and I remember notion that digital fashion is contactless. Of course, it was very important in the beginning of 2020, and that it's like fully sustainable. But actually, nobody ever calculated the data, and of course, it's very important to be very truthful with everything that you are putting out there. So we decided to establish this methodology of calculating environmental impact of digital fashion, and that's exactly why and how we started working with UN, because there was no such data before, and they reached out to us to review it and to use it moving forward. Same with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is the largest funded and research company working on sustainability of fashion in particular. So of course it's important for us, and we continue doing these reports. We actually patented this methodology as well, and it's kind of becoming an industry standard now. And second, that everyone at the market understand the importance of it, and also start tracking that part, because I believe there is a lot of new data is coming up with an adoption and with a scale, because we will go deeper in the subject, because there are a lot of servers, and then how efficient they are, and it comes to the question of what energy are we using to charge this phone, which I'm using to make this AR videos. So we can go deeper and deeper, but I believe it should be a very important part of the product itself.
That's awesome. Okay, so for our last question for each of you, I was researching World Logic Day before coming here, and one thing that really fascinated me is part of this initiative is centering humans in technology development. So you're all technology companies, obviously. Tell me a little bit more about like how a human-first approach has impacted the way you think about your company foundation and tech development. Abby, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, that kind of tags on to the whole, we were thinking about this concept and how it was incredibly isolating and moms were in closets. By creating, and we're obviously kind of prop tech that meets health and wellness tech. So we've got, we operate the suites. We aren't a tenant in the building, but we operate them. And then we are able to provide additional services digitally that build on top of that. But one of the things that was so great to see was that moms felt like they couldn't maybe confide in a coworker when they're having tough times coming back, because they want to, put on their game face and show their back. But when they're in our spaces and they're meeting other working moms who work in their buildings or work nearby, and they're kind of in there around the same times, they create these natural support communities, support networks. And so that was really beautiful to see kind of in our early days. And everything we're doing with our mission is very human focused. I mean, you're talking about ways for mothers to provide for their families and a very intimate health task, really. And so everything we do comes back down to that user experience and the impact that it has on their children and their families and kind of their whole well-being. And so that's where we think about the way that we interact with them from a technical standpoint, and our virtual, we have virtual lactation consultants available at the touch of the button. We've got mental health experts through our technology at the touch of the button. And really being very careful in what we're providing virtually versus what we're also trying to create in the spaces, in the buildings, in the real estate, so that they feel completely and wholly supported and respected. I mean, breastfeeding is one thing that's very beautiful. Pumping is not that beautiful, and it is not fun at all. And so when you're stuck in an IT closet, there's no dignity. You're feeling incredibly vulnerable. Your coworkers are outside the door. They can hear you. And so everything we are doing is to kind of put dignity back into the equation and set working mothers up for success in both of their roles.
Awesome. How about you, Natalia?
Yeah, so for us, again, we have a deck, and there is it's a historical slide in every of our decks since day one. We keep it. In the middle, there is a person, and their outfits are changing. And then around, you see more options, and then different digital environments where you can wear it. So of course, from day one, for us, it's the person is in the middle, and everything that we are building based on a feedback loop from the client. That's exactly how we accumulated a lot of unique data on the subject. Yeah, definitely digital fashion is also, yes, we talked about more sustainable, but it's also more inclusive because there is no sizes. It's more durable. There's no genders, everyone can wear anything, and it's really empowering the self-identity in a digital world. So definitely thinking about a person and giving more tools for fulfilling and identifying themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, human-centered technology is just the wave of the future, right? Everyone is customer obsessed, building for their segment. Otherwise, you're not really fixing actual problems. And so being human-centric is the way to go. For us, it's about closing the wealth and opportunity gap for diverse individuals. It's about ownership, not only ownership of their business, but ownership of the data that will help them to scale their business beyond their current circumstance. We're laser focused on creating diverse millionaires. Every day, that's what we do. We've grown, our customers' AOV by 250%, but our goal by 2024 is 400%. That is the mission. Everything that we do is about that, because we believe that every, customer on our platform, of which there's 1,500 now, and hopefully, 6,000 at the end of this year, we know that they can be millionaires. And so they need that ownership, they need that data, and they need to understand that this is a path to wealth. And we are here to facilitate that path. Yeah.
Well, incredible. I think I can say this was an amazing panel filled with so many rich insights. Thank you guys for spending your time with me. If anyone would like to learn more about the Artemis Fund, please let me know. We will be releasing an impact report highlighting these 3 incredible founders and their companies along with the rest of our portfolio in February. And so I'd love to share that with you. And I know everyone is ready for lunch. So thank you again. And, have a wonderful day.
There's food trucks outside.
Yeah, food
Thank you
trucks.
so much.
Yeah.